Have you heard about the Untangling Our Roots Summit? Untangling Our Roots is a summit created for people impacted by adoption, donor conception, misattributed parentage, and unexpected DNA discoveries, along with therapists, genealogists, and advocates who support them. This is more than a conference about discovery. It's about what comes after, how we process identity shifts, navigate relationships, grieve what is lost, and build meaning moving forward. Over 3+ days, attendees will engage in powerful conversations, practical workshops, and quiet spaces for reflection, covering healing, mental health, genealogy, storytelling, ethics, advocacy, and so much more. Untangling Our Roots offers community, understanding, and tools without pressure to have it all figured out. This year's summit is March 19th through the 22nd, 2026 in Atlanta. You can learn more and register at untanglingourroots.org.
So that wrapped up the visit. And what is so crazy to me now, I look back on that and I didn't put too much thought or stock in that. I was on such cloud nine. I'm like, well, things are just going to continue how they've been going. And I was wrong.
Welcome to DNA Surprises, a podcast that explores the life-altering world of unexpected DNA discoveries. I'm your host, Alexis Auersalt. This show centers the stories of people who've experienced NPEs, or non-paternal events. In other words, people who've learned that their biological father isn't who they thought he was. We'll also hear from adoptees, donor-conceived people, and the families navigating these discoveries. Get ready to follow the incredible journeys that begin with a simple DNA test. This is DNA Surprises. My quest to find my past would return again and again in the years to come, like a lighthouse beacon that flashes bright and then fades, only to return again. This quote, written by Steve Pemberton and shared by this week's guest, perfectly captures the hold that DNA Surprises have on so many. There are periods of intense focus on our feelings, our research, and our desire for connection. These are sometimes followed by periods where thoughts and feelings are fleeting, especially as time goes on. But they often return again, just like a lighthouse beacon. In this week's episode, Ellen shares how she learned the truth about her paternity more than 2 decades ago. Since then, she embarked on a quest to learn the truth about her biological father. She's encountered acceptance, quiet rejection, and obstacles that have prevented her from fully connecting with her newfound family. But she holds on to her desire for truth and connection. Thank you for sharing your story, Ellen.
I'm Ellen. I am in my late 30s. I'm from the Midwest. I have known about my NPE status for over 25 years now. I did not find out from a DNA test, although I have done one as an adult. I grew up pretty unconventionally. I was the middle child of 3 children. I had a mom and dad that were raising me, and I did not question their relation to me biologically. But I wouldn't say it was an easy childhood. My raised father was just very eccentric, educated and very intelligent, but was never satisfied with a job or career path. And so that lack of stability, it took our family along for a wild ride. In addition, there was a big religious theme growing up in my home. The best way I would describe it is my parents were charismatic Christians, involved in different churches, small groups. There were just always these people in our lives that spoke this kind of charismatic Christian language. So my parents would all often share what they called their testimony. What that means basically is you share all the tales of your life, good, bad, and ugly, and ultimately how that led you to Christ. So I grew up feeling like it was very normal for my parents to tell their testimony. I was very familiar with their testimony. And then one day when I was 11 years old, my raised dad asked me to go in our backyard with him, and he wanted to share his testimony with me, which immediately felt and off because I had heard it so many times and I just didn't know why he was making it a point to do this. So he's telling me the story. It's very familiar. Essentially, he married my mom in their early 20s. They had my older sister right away. And then 4 years into their marriage, they got divorced. And he moved to a different state. And my mom was a single mom raising my sister. And 4 years after their divorce, they remarried. And I had always assumed that I came along right after the remarriage. That was the part of the testimony that I was learning for the first time. So it was actually my raised dad who told me that he was not my biological dad, that during my parents' divorce, the way he described it to me was, it didn't mean anything. It wasn't a big deal. Basically, I'm not your biological dad, but your biological dad was just a sperm donor, and I'm your real dad. And ultimately, this crazy thing, led us to Christ and led us to getting remarried. And then they had my younger brother. So it's interesting being the NPE as a middle child. My older sibling and younger sibling are full-blown siblings, and the middle one is the half.
I'm thinking about the fact that you've heard your parents share so much of their story. Mm-hmm. So I imagine that you really felt like you knew everything about them, even more than maybe some like other people whose parents don't, share their whole dark secrets and all of that as part of the testimony as you're describing it. So, and then you're also just 11 years old and you're learning all of this information. How are you feeling in that moment?
The best way I can describe it is like you're about to go down like a roller coaster. Like my stomach dropped out from within me. The shock, I still don't think I'm over the shock. I feel like a lot of people, when they find out, were like, there had been all these signs all along. I don't want to say that I knew, but I can remember the day I found out, not immediately, but very soon after, feeling like this just makes so much sense. This makes so much sense. But what was different about the time versus if I had found out today is there was no internet. I basically was given this bombshell with no details attached to it. And I was just sort of left with my own imagination.
You didn't get like a name. You didn't know who he was. It was just, this was somebody who was a quote sperm donor, which we hear sometimes, which I'm assuming when your dad said it, he did not mean it like truly your mom went and found a donor. It was the more like derogatory sperm donor.
Exactly. Phrasing. He was emphasizing the fact that this isn't an important person. This isn't someone you need to worry about. I'm your dad, but you just need to know the logistics kind of a thing. Another thing I now realize as an adult, it's strange that my mom wasn't present with him to tell me. And she didn't even know that he was doing it at that moment. She has since told me that they knew they were going to have to tell me because so many people knew. And they had talked to someone at their church who told them that like 11 was the perfect age to find out. I don't believe there is a perfect age to find out. I generally speaking think the earlier the better. But this is a time, this was a season of my life when I was going from, actually it was puberty basically. You're going from a kid and you're transitioning into a teenager, and it was an interesting time to find out. And I remember basically kind of just carrying this news silently that whole day, just wanting to cry, but I learned quickly that I had to be careful with my raised dad's feelings, basically. I didn't feel free to ask questions or talk about it. Later that evening, my mom had a chance to get me alone. She made it clear right away that she was a safe space to ask questions to. And I got a totally different picture from her that night. She said, essentially, this was not just a sperm donor. This was someone she was engaged to. This is someone who was excited to learn about my mom's pregnancy. This is someone who was devastated to be cut out of the picture. And I was given a name and some general details like his age, roughly his location. And that really, to this day, that information has changed everything. I don't think it would be easier if he were a sperm donor or a one-night stand or someone who wanted nothing to do with me. That would be a different kind of hard. But it was certainly hard to hear that this is someone who wanted me. And it's someone I don't even know.
Did she offer to connect you to him? Did she know where he was? Or was that even a conversation at that point?
No, absolutely not. And back to the fact that my raised dad was very unconventional, my family was getting ready to pack up and move overseas at this time. We actually spent a year living in a third world country, which I already felt like I had this news and I had no way of connecting with it. Like now as an adult, I would, Google things. I would go on an information hunt. That just wasn't an option back then. I didn't even have a picture. My mom had not saved a single picture of him. So then we moved to this third world country and it just felt like I was even more detached from being able to obtain any of the information that I was just so hungry for. And I kept waiting for the day that I wouldn't think about this, that I wouldn't obsess about this. And it just never came. So we moved back to the States. We moved an hour and a half away from where we had been living prior to living overseas. I enter high school. I do high school very normally, and we managed to stay in the same spot for 4 years. And as I was approaching the end of high school, one of my friends at the time encouraged me to take action on this. She said, "It's been 7 years that you've known, so it doesn't seem like your fascination and interest in this is going to go away." She's like, "Just reach out and see what happens." So at the time, with just the knowledge of his name and roughly his location, I paid $35. Back then, this was how you obtained an accurate address. And that was a lot of money for a senior in high school back then. But I paid the $35. I got his name and address, and I just sat on it for a while. And then I wrote a handwritten letter. I included a few pictures, and I was just so terrified to send the darn thing. And I think the main reason I always suppressed this so much, my desire to know him, my desire to reach out, it always went back to my raised dad. I just knew it wouldn't go well. So my friend takes the letter for me. She uses her own address as the return label. And she's like, "I'm not going to tell you when I mail this. I'm just going to mail it and we're going to see what happens." So the letter is in her hands and the weeks and months start rolling by.
During this time, what are you hoping once that letter is sent and reaches your biological father?
I could not picture what I wanted or how this would work out or what it would look like. As that was my hesitation in reaching out. I couldn't picture how this was going to work, but I just knew that I couldn't keep living feeling so unsettled about it. So I really went into it blindly, just hoping for basically internal resolution. I just wanted some sort of peace with it, resolution. Even him just telling me, like, acknowledging that I was there and, saying, "I don't want to meet you" or whatever. Even that would have been enough for me. It would have just been resolution. The whole thing always felt so open-ended, and it's hard to live with that. But my mom really assured me, she's like, he's not going to not want to meet you. She's like, I know this man. She's like, he's probably thought about you every day since you've been born.
And so your mom knew that you were sending a letter to him?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did your dad know?
No.
Okay. So you said you graduated high school.
Yes. I graduate high school. I start college. I pretty much lost touch with that friend. And I don't remember exactly how long. It wasn't a full year. It was like 9-10 months, something like that. I get out of class one day and see I have a voicemail from her, and I instantly knew what it was about. And she's like, yep, you got to come to my house. You got to pick up this letter. Drive out to her house, pick up this FedEx looking envelope. It was not handwritten like mine was, but there was a single photo of him. And so this is the first time I had ever laid eyes on his face after, 7-8 years of carrying this knowledge. The letter was wasn't super lovey-dovey. It was pretty professional, informative. I mean, details I had always wondered about. Is he married? Does he have any kids? What does he do for work? All of that was disclosed. He was married. He had one daughter who surprisingly was not much younger than me. That was a very interesting thing to learn.
How close were you in age?
3 years. He is, I would say, significantly younger than my mom. He's about 7 years younger than my mom.
Okay.
So he was very young when this happened. And so it was a little surprising for me to learn only 3 years later he had another child, but that was his only other child. So he ends the letter with, here's my email address. Let's move this conversation to email. So we email back and forth for a few months, and then he suggests meeting. So I had to move back home. This is in between my freshman and sophomore year of college. I had to move back home for the summer, terrified of what my raised dad will think and handle this news and everything. But now that we're getting to the point of me meeting my bio dad, I just felt like I can't not tell him. I'm living in their house. So I told him, and it did not go well. But I just somehow had the courage to keep moving forward with everything anyway. So
what was his reaction? What did he say?
He said something, and it's going to sound like I'm making excuses for him, but I do know, the one thing I do know is he did love me. I believe he still loves me. And he just has this personality and this impulsivity that he can tend to say pretty damaging things. And so he said something I will unfortunately never forget. And it was, well, go spend the next 20 years with your real dad then. I knew he didn't mean it. I knew we'd get past it or whatever, but it's still to this day just, that was a very hurtful thing to say.
Yeah,
so
that's a lot, especially when you haven't really connected even. And this is the only dad you've really known. So
yeah, the adults in my life just approached this very gray situation so black and white. And I have learned as an adult myself and a parent myself, me knowing my biological dad did not mean that I could not have a great relationship with my raised dad. In fact, it probably would have been better because this big thing wouldn't have been suppressed and associated with so much guilt. Yeah. So meeting my biological dad. So he picks the perfect middle location because, at this time we're living an hour and a half away from each other. I don't think I've ever been so nervous in my entire life. I was 18 years old. I'm driving this beater car. I'm meeting him in a big city with my MapQuest, with my printed out MapQuest. My hands were,
days, yes,
shaking and sweating. And I can't believe I'm doing this huge thing. We met at a coffee shop and I remember walking up just like my heart is racing so fast. I'm like, how am I even going to do this? Like, how do I bring myself to do this? Because I just have never been so scared my whole life. And the coffee shop is busy, very busy, but the front of it is glass. And before I'd even opened the door, I spotted him. I immediately became completely calm, like instantly calm, opened the door to the coffee shop, go sit right across from him, and all nerves and anxiety and everything vanished. And it was absolutely that feeling of, this is a person I have known my whole life that I am just now meeting. I look a lot like him. We have very similar features, mannerisms, and I just felt like the chemistry was there instantly. We hung out that day for like 5 or 6 hours. We went to a restaurant for lunch. We got ice cream. We were walking all around this city. I think we both kind of felt like, how does this end? We don't want this to end. Like, we've waited 18 years to know each other. It's finally here. I remember feeling like just this relief of like, thank God I don't have to live with this big question mark in my mind anymore. I know who he is. He's going to be a part of my life forever now. It felt so, I don't even know how to describe it. It just felt so, just like things finally becoming complete. I was concerned about my raised dad, but it just felt so like a coming home moment. We departed that day, and it did kind of feel like, well, what now? I'm in college. You live far away. Where do we go from here? We tended to email a lot in those years. That was just how we kept in touch. And my older sister, who, keep in mind, is 8 years older than me because she, came around so early before that divorce and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And also an incredibly supportive person from day one with this. And also what's so interesting is at the time that my mom was with my biological dad, which was really, I've learned as an adult, only 1 year. It felt like they were together a lot longer, but they were really only together 1 year. My sister was 7 at the time, and she remembers him. She remembers that whole year. She also has nothing but positive things to say about my biological dad. And she also had to carry this knowledge.
That's what I was going to say is at 7. So she remembered.
Yes. And the first 11 years of my life, she had to carry the knowledge knowing I didn't know. She was always afraid of me finding out because she wanted a wholesome family. And she knew as soon as I found out that it would basically change me forever. And she wasn't wrong, but she's just been incredibly supportive and there for me from day one with all of this. So at the time that I'm in college and kind of dealing with this long distance thing with my bio dad, my sister lived near him. So she was always a landing pad for me. I would come stay with her. I would see my bio dad, and she was just supportive of it, and it was great. So the second time I see my bio dad, it's only maybe a month later, and it's this side of town, which is where my sister lives. This is close to where he lives. This is where his whole relationship with my mom happened. And the second time we got together was the best time of connection and just kind of opening up of this thing we both carried for so long. And the bond was really solidifying, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful time together that I will truly remember forever. The get together was kind of wrapping up, and he's like, hey, I would love to drive you by the home I grew up in. And I'm like, I'd love to. I am on cloud 9 at this point. And so we're driving by his old home. I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden he's like, Ellen, I'm really sorry. Like, I gotta pull over. I gotta get out of the car for a minute. And I'm like, what on earth? And it was his wife. His wife had shown up at our second get together, and it became clear to me pretty quickly that she was not happy about things. So again, I'm on such cloud 9 and so young at the time that on your podcast, I've heard so many people mention how they considered the families before reaching out. I'm ashamed to admit that I hadn't even factored that in, but I was so young. Now I would factor that in.
Sure.
But he had not mentioned that his wife might be having an issue with this.
So she just shows up? She just shows up during your meeting?
She shows up, yes.
Okay.
And her tone was harsh. Like, it became very clear right away that this is not a situation where she's totally okay with this and supportive and whatever. But clearly, he's been going along with it anyway. So that wrapped up the visit. And what is so crazy to me now, I look back on that and I didn't put too much thought or stock in that. I was on such cloud nine. I'm like, well, things are just going to continue how they've been going. And I was wrong. So the third time we got together, his wife was there when I showed up. And he didn't mention that she was going to be there. The tone certainly, she was softer. She was working harder to be nicer to me this time. But it was still clear to me that it was not okay. And the conversation was very different. It went from these meetings were about me and my dad getting to know each other, talking through a lot of these painful things from the past, to just small talk with me and her. And she did talk quite a bit about their daughter, which again, at this time, this is such a big mental thing to carry that now I have the bandwidth and have put in a lot of thought about my half sister, but at the time I had not. And the way that they were talking about her, it seemed like she knew about the situation. So I'm in college. I'm living far away. This goes on for about 3 years where I'm seeing him and his wife 2 to 3 times a year. It's very small talky. It's very kind of controlled, formal. And in the chaos of my college years and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, I didn't really stop to think, where is this going? What's going to become of this? I was just kind of trying to get through college and figure out what I was going to do after that. In hindsight, I'm sure I was talking to them about possibilities I saw for myself. Like at one point, I thought I was going to join the military. I had talked about the Peace Corps. I had talked about moving to different states. But as college came to an end, I had no plan. I had no job. I had no money. My older sister, so welcoming and supportive for me, was like, just come live with me for a little while and you can figure out what's next. So I'm getting together with my bio dad and his wife about a month before I'm moving in with my sister. So now the plan is clear. Or it was like, oh, she might do all these different things, but now we see what the next step is. And I, for the life of me, cannot remember the full detail of this get together. I don't know if it is a trauma response, something in my mind trying to protect me. All I remember is that a confrontation started out of nowhere. I remember thinking this came out of thin air because I am just about the most non-confrontational person ever. So is my bio dad. Something started with his wife and I remember pulling away in my car, kind of in a frenzy. Like my dad and his wife were arguing. I don't know. I got in my car. I drove to my sister's house. I was crying. My bio dad started calling me. My sister remembers me talking on the phone with him. And apparently on that phone call, I said to him, could we start just getting together, you and I? I think this is something I had been thinking for a long time, like us meeting this late in life, like it is not out of the question to ask for a few get-togethers where we can just kind of get to know like almost like a therapy session where we deal with some deep stuff, share some stuff, and we just 3 years of knowing him had gone by and we just weren't getting that opportunity because I felt like I had to keep his wife happy and keep things small and light and whatever. So we have this phone call. I'm honest with my feelings about that. I'm crying, whatever. The call ends. Then I'm thrown into the chaos of packing up my college life across the state, moving in with my sister, finding a new job. And during that time, he was sending me very long emails, and I wasn't giving them my full attention. I remember at this time feeling like I just got to park this for a minute because it doesn't seem like there's a resolution, and I got to take care of like my basic needs, like moving and finding a job. We've always communicated through email, sometimes slow, sometimes fast. A lot of times they were long emails. And so a couple months go by and I really start to give those emails my full attention. And this is what is so annoying about the time that this happened. Nowadays, you have the same phone number and email address for multiple decades. Back then, like as the tech boom was happening, like millennials didn't know what they were doing. We had like 6 different email addresses. And
Hotmail,
then
AOL, Yahoo.
Yes, Hotmail is the offender here. And Hotmail is like notorious for people not being able to get back in and all this stuff. So these intense emails were happening on Hotmail of all accounts. And so I cannot access that account anymore. I can't remember what these emails say. I journaled cryptically about them. The one clue that I had to go on is that I journaled at this time. I'm plagued with thoughts of my bio dad. I really need to reply to his emails. And I do remember at one point I did reply. And then I didn't hear anything. And I'm like, it's okay. You took a long time to respond. He's going to take a long time to respond. Well, a full year goes by and I'm now living locally to him. At this phase, I started to figure out that I could do some online researching, sleuthing, if you will. So I start looking up his daughter on Facebook and certainly was seeing pictures and clues and all this stuff. Signs of life, I guess, is one way to put it.
Sure. Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, and I wasn't, again, there is this book I read, and there's a quote from this. It's a book written by an NPE. It's an amazing read. It's called A Chance in the World by Steve Pemberton.
Ooh, I haven't heard of that.